The end. Every series has one. They are incredibly hard to get perfectly right. And Avatar: The Last Airbender has one that's a little bit controversial. Some people love it, some people feel a bit disappointed by it, and I understand why. Today I want to talk about the ending of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I want to talk about the things that it did very, 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 very well. And I want to talk about some of the things that it could have done better. This is one of my favorite series of all time. It is my favorite TV show that I've ever watched. I have a playlist full of Avatar videos if you're interested in seeing them, if you haven't already checked out some of my Avatar videos. I love this series and I love the way it ended, but it is not without fault. But we're gonna start by backing up a little bit. In the beginning of the series, Aang struggles with being the chosen one, the one with the burden of the world's fate on his shoulders, as well as the burden of having rejected that fate and therefore not being there when the air nomads were wiped out. As we get closer and closer to the climax, Aang has visited a lot of places in the world, seen the devastation and effects of the Fire Nation, and now, for the sake of the people, he is taking on that burden of being the chosen one, of having the fate of the world on his shoulders, and he's willing to accept this role. But now his new burden is having to reconcile with the fact that he would have to take another man's life, even an evil man, still taking another man's life. And in doing so, he would have to forsake the traditions and the beliefs and the values instilled in him by the very people that he failed. This is a great evolution of conflict for Aang's character. Not to mention the fact that we have the conflict that we've been facing all throughout the series of Zuko chasing his honor, chasing acceptance, chasing his place in life, and trying to find that through the approval of his family, of the people around him, and continually coming against roadblock and roadblock, digression and digression as he continues to rise and fall as a character through his arc of redemption. And then he stands facing one of the members of his family that has been the cruelest, that has gaslit him and manipulated him the most, facing against her, assured in who he is. The evolution of conflict in Zuko and the climax of that for him as well is an excellent, these are amazing character evolutions that are happening at the same time, simultaneously, that are being resolved simultaneously during the fight. It's amazing. Also, and we have Suki and Sokka and Toph and what they're doing during the final fight, the White Lotuses and their influence, all that they're doing as well, and cutting back and forth between all these things. The action, the emotion, the impact is impeccable. Not to mention, we also have the build up to the final battle, with them planning the siege and that failing, losing their father who they only just got back, and having to accept someone into their group who they normally would never have trusted again, Zuko, because of how many times he has failed them and betrayed them and harmed them up to this point. The build up to this final battle, with their many successes, with their personal turmoils, with the things that they have to face and the decisions, the hard decisions that they have to make. Not to mention also Aang, who's having these continuous nightmares and constantly going back and forth with accepting his duty and wanting to protect the people and wanting to stop Ozai, but not being able to reckon with having to kill him. All this buildup, all this setup, all these false victories that end in failures, but that they continue to pursue past and persevere on and get stronger and pivot and figure out a way. All this that led to this final battle is incredible. But it is also controversial for a reason. A lot of people find that the introduction of the lion turtle and his cosmic powers and the seemingly deus ex machina of him just handing Aang exactly what he needs to be able to take down Ozai without killing him, it all just kind of felt out of nowhere and was ultimately pretty unsatisfying. I think this is a fair criticism, but I also don't think it's quite as cut and dry as that. Up to the very end, Aang is desperate to find a solution to stop Ozai outside of killing him. He calls on his past selves and asks for their counsel, each of them advising him to kill or expressing regret for having not killed to save their people. Even his past air nomad self essentially tells him that his goals are a great thing for a normal nomad, but the Avatar doesn't get the luxury of principles because their ultimate purpose is protecting the world more than it is protecting their personal needs. Now, I actually think that this would have been a very interesting route to go and a really interesting concept to explore. The idea that personal desires and beliefs and principles are all valuable and a wonderful thing to pursue, but the idea that when the fate of thousands or millions of people are in the Avatar's hands, they don't get the luxury of those things. They just have to protect people, whatever it takes. This would be a really interesting route to pursue, to explore, if it weren't a kids show. If it weren't aired on Nickelodeon and that were a possibility. But this is a kids show, so it's not gonna deviate that way. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that would have been a really cool concept to explore, but if we did, we would have needed an entire 4th season of this show to explore Aang's PTSD that would have come with him rejecting his core beliefs. It's like the other times that Aang was violent. There are other times in this series where Aang has physically and emotionally harmed people and almost certainly killed people. He has serious emotional repercussions to that. He will suppress using the Avatar state again because he doesn't want to harm anybody, or he'll try to push down all of his emotions altogether because he doesn't want to lose control again. So if he were, after continually having these highs, these ups and downs with being violent, and made the ultimate choice, I can't do this, this is not what I believe in, this is not who I will be. If he made this choice and then decided, I don't get to have this choice, this isn't a luxury I get, and he killed Ozai, we would need to explore how tremendously that would affect him. It wouldn't be an honest ending to his character unless we also took it to what the next step of that would be, which would be him crumbling, having to set aside who he is and what he believes for the sake of the nation. Would it be a bad thing for him to have to do that? I would say no, because he would be saving millions of lives. But it couldn't end there. We couldn't end season 3 and the entire series there. So let's explore what we did do, the lion turtle and the energy bending. I think as a concept, this isn't inherently bad. In fact, I think it kind of works really well. It's just not necessarily the way we did it. As a concept, energy bending makes sense within this world. It's their energy that gives them the ability to bend in the first place. It's their energy that they have to connect with in order to extend past the basics of bending and branch out into the specialty things, like lightning bending. And I think it fits well with things that we learned about chakras, about Ty Lee's ability to chi block, and when Zuko got deathly ill because his chi was blocked from the turmoil inside of him. Even the lion turtle, I think, could really work. Aang refused to listen to absolutely everybody around him, his friends and his past selves, and he would not budge. The previous avatars didn't even know that the lion turtle existed, and I believe it's Aang's refusal to accept that this is the only way that attracted the lion turtle to him in the first place. The lion turtle has seemingly not deemed any of the previous avatars worthy of the knowledge of energy bending, because to bend another's energy, your own spirit must be unbendable, or you will be corrupted and destroyed. Aang earned the knowledge of energy bending by demonstrating his spirit to be unbendable when it came to his value of life, which is important because energy bending is an incredible power, one that could be used for incredible destruction. And in theory, the lion turtle wouldn't want to put it in anyone's hands that could potentially abuse it. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that this comes off like a Deus Ex Machina. Even though the lion turtle is mentioned a couple times throughout the series, it's never expanded on what the lion turtle actually is. And so while yes, this creature is vaguely mentioned, there's really no foreshadowing or buildup. There's also no mention of energy bending, unless I'm just forgetting. I don't believe there's any mention of energy bending before this moment. So because of the lack of buildup, I mean, it doesn't have to be so heavily foreshadowed that we could guess exactly what's going to happen beat by beat, but just some vague mention of energy bending, even if it was something that the air nomads had talked about in a history long past, something that was possible, something that Aang could recollect and even pursue on his own potentially, would make this feel more satisfying. Just something so that it doesn't feel quite so out of left field. But I do like that it's not like Aang couldn't have won this fight without this energy bending ability. He could have defeated Ozai, and we'll explore that in just a second. But if Aang had chosen to kill Ozai, I believe he would have succeeded and he would have saved the world that way. So it's not even like Aang couldn't have won if this magical ability, this mystical power hadn't been dropped in his lap at the perfect time. That's not what the story is doing. It's more that Aang could have forsaken his values and killed Ozai and succeeded in everything that he needed to do, but it's because he refused to take that route that the lion turtle presented itself to him. Still, frankly, not super satisfying because it's not super foreshadowed. If it had been better foreshadowed, if it had been better explained, I think there was enough here that it could have been satisfying if it had just been explored a little bit more. I'll also mention that a common criticism I see is that Aang refusing to kill someone when he has harmed and probably killed people throughout the series makes his conflict seem inconsistent. And while I already addressed the fact that for the majority of the times that he harmed people, he had some serious emotional kickback and heavy turmoil over those things, I will also note that that's not always true. Even up to the very last moment when he initiates combat with Ozai by taking down an airship full of people who were controlling the airship and likely killing them all, this is a very fair complaint, and I wish his struggle had been a little bit more consistent, because there's a lot of deaths that aren't even acknowledged that are decidedly he killed someone there, or at the very least seriously harmed some people, and he doesn't seem to even acknowledge it. But let's move on to the fight, because we have more to discuss about this ending and more to discuss about all of this. Because the ending really was near perfect in almost every way. Ozai's entrance with the Sea of Fire that validated that he really was a threat. Just the same, Aang instantly showcases his power and ability to handle things with violence if that were the path he chose. The action between these two in and of its own is fantastic. Seeing Aang use all four of the elements so seamlessly, giving instant payoff to what we've been doing this entire series, trying to master the elements. Then when he's in his avatar state with all four elements circling him and the sheer power of it as he chases down Ozai. And eventually he overpowers Ozai and nearly killed him, could have easily taken him out right there. Further displaying that Aang is the more powerful person here and he could kill Ozai if that were the choice that he made. But Aang chose to come out of the avatar state and face him as an air nomad, as his truest self. And he chooses to end it his way, and in doing so, he honors the beliefs and the values of the people that he once failed. In my opinion, it's an incredible full circle ending for his character that brings to a close the turmoil and the baggage and the pain that he has been carrying throughout this entire series. I'll also note that the way Aang did decide to end this battle is by removing Ozai's ability to bend, which means that he took the most powerful man in the world who had elevated himself to god status and made him powerless, which arguably is a worse fate than death in Ozai's eyes. So yes, it was peaceful, but it wasn't consequenceless. In fact, this is a great punishment for him. And while I do think that it would have been interesting to explore the concept that the previous air nomad, airbender, avatar, that she presented, I do think it would have been very interesting to explore what she talked about with the series. I still think that exploring this option, this narrative, is also very, very interesting and satisfying. Couple all that with the fact that we're having the final Agni Kai at the same time as Zuko faces off against his sister, who was always deemed the worthy one in her father's eyes. Now he faces her with balance in his life. He's no longer searching for approval from those that would never truly give it to him. He's no longer in turmoil, unsure of who he really is. He stands before her strong and assured in himself and in his destiny. And Azula stands before him unstable and lost. Her friends betrayed her, she's haunted by the memory of her mother, and she's about to lose the throne that she was just about to get. The fact that Azula was able to produce lightning in such an unstable state, even though Iroh said that you have to have complete power over your emotions, says something about Azula's raw talent. But the whole theme of the show is balance. And while Ozai treated Zuko horribly, he always had his mother and Iroh to balance it with love and affection. Azula never had a balance. Not to mention the somber music and lack of dialogue in this fight, just drawing us closer to the meaning of the fight for the characters, not focusing on the hype or how cool the fight is, but what's being lost in what must be done. No scene has ever quite affected me like this one does. The way Azula frantically screams and cries, there's just so much pain in just a few seconds. We get these two powerful, symbolic fights that bring so much closure to so many external and internal struggles that are showcased throughout the entire series. And while I think both of these fight scenes are visually incredible and amazing to watch, the emphasis on both of these fights is on the emotions and the cost. The ending isn't perfect, and I agree that the element of the sea turtle and energy bending, the way it was presented, is ultimately a bit unsatisfying, primarily because of the lack of buildup. Not to say that the sea turtle is never mentioned before in the series, because it is. Not to say that energy bending doesn't work within the series, because it does. But in order to make something feel satisfying, there has to be some sort of foreshadowing so that it doesn't feel like it's come from nowhere. And I just don't think that there was near enough foreshadowing for this to work. It just needed more buildup. But with all that said, the build up to the final battle, the internal struggles that each character is facing, the way their struggles are addressed and in a lot of ways acknowledged, resolved, or at least come around full circle within the final battle. The parallels of Aang's battle happening at the same time as Zuko's, at the same time as the Sokka with the airship and with the White Lotus, and everything that's happening all at once. And the emphasis on emotions rather than just building a whole bunch of hype, it manages to have that hype plus the acknowledgement of what these people are going through in the moment. I think that it's an incredible ending. I don't think it's a perfect ending, but I think that it's incredible, and I think that the positives way, way, way outweigh the bad. Honestly, this is one of the best endings I've ever experienced in any media. This is easily one of the best series enders ever. It's not without fault, but it's pretty incredible. But I would love to hear what you think. Are you a fan of the ending? And what did you think about the ending overall when you first watched it? Were you unsatisfied? Are you satisfied now? Has it always just been awesome for you? I love it. I think it's such a good ending. I'm really looking forward to reading your thoughts in the comments, so please do continue to chat with me there. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the other channel, which is linked in the description. I'll see you again soon. Bye.